I never imagined that the biggest shift in my life would come on an ordinary weekday morning, tucked inside a manila envelope with my name written across it. The attorney's office smelled faintly of leather and dust, the blinds half drawn against the late autumn sun. Benjamin Harrison, a calm man with wire-rimmed glasses, slid a document across the polished oak desk, and I could see his lips moving, but my mind froze on the bold heading, Last Will and Testament of James Wallace. Everything Benjamin repeated gently, as if I hadn't understood him the first time. Your uncle left you his entire estate valued at just over $11 million. The countryside property, the investments, all of it. He wanted you to have the chance he never gave himself. The words ricocheted in my skull like bullets. $11 million. My throat tightened, my palms damp against the edge of the desk. For a moment I felt dizzy, like the floor beneath me had tilted. I had expected perhaps an old watch or a letter filled with advice. Not this. My relationship with Uncle James had always been complicated. My father's estranged older brother, he was the ghost who appeared at a handful of family gatherings, a man both admired and resented. As a child, I remembered being half afraid of him, his booming laugh, his commanding presence, the way adults always whispered after he left the room. And yet, in those rare visits to his sprawling estate, I had felt something else too, a strange magic. His library smelled of old paper and wood polish, his shelves lined with rare books and maps. He would kneel down beside me, lowering that deep voice to say, "Curiosity, Tiffany, is the only true compass in life. Follow it even when it frightens you." Decades later, after his diagnosis with advanced heart disease, I had started visiting him weekly at the hospital. The image of him frail in a white gown, yet his eyes still burning with intellect, was seared into me. "Life is too short for grudges," he whispered, once his hand trembling in mine. "Wealth means nothing if you don't know who to trust." At the time, I thought he was talking about my father. Now I wondered if he had been warning me about something else entirely. Benjamin slid another envelope forward, a letter in Uncle James's spidery handwriting. "Dear Tiffany, if you're reading this, I've already moved on to whatever comes next. You remind me of myself, stubborn smart, unwilling to bend. This inheritance is not a gift, it is a test. Use it wisely. And remember, money doesn't change who people are, it only unmasks them." I folded the letter carefully, though my hands trembled. I thought of Eric, my husband, of how we had spent the last few years scraping by. His art, once full of fire and possibility, had withered under constant rejection. I had taken on extra work at the advertising agency, chasing deadlines and living on caffeine just to keep us afloat. This money could change everything. It could free him from frustration, free me from exhaustion. It could save our marriage. For the first time in months, a flicker of hope stirred in me. On my way out of the attorney's office, I stepped into a jewelry store. The glass cases glittered with indulgence, but one sleek watch caught my eye. Minimalist design, bold silver face, something that spoke of fresh beginnings. Eric had always admired such things, though we could never afford them. I bought it without hesitation. As I carried the little box back to the car, I rehearsed how I would tell him. I would make him close his eyes, press the watch into his palm, then whisper the news. He would laugh, scoop me into his arms, maybe even cry. For once, we could breathe. I called him, eager to hear his voice. "Eric, I'm coming home early. I have incredible news." There was a pause on the line, then his voice flat. "I'm in the middle of a project, Tiffany. Something experimental." "This is important," I said softly. 30 minutes, that's all." A sigh impatient. "Fine. Just don't expect much reaction. I'm in my creative zone." The call ended, leaving a faint chill in its wake. I shook it off. He was an artist, moody, distracted. Once he saw the watch, once he heard about the inheritance, he would understand. Rain began as a light drizzle, painting the highway in silver streaks. I turned on the radio, some cheerful pop song that didn't match the storm gathering outside or the storm quietly gathering in me. My mind raced ahead. Maybe we could buy a little house with a garden. Maybe I could finally take that trip to Italy. Maybe, just maybe, Eric would find himself again. I was so lost in the dream that at first I didn't register the danger. A semi 2 lanes over shuddered violently, its trailer fishtailing across the slick pavement. My breath caught. Time slowed, stretching into terrible clarity. The truck jackknifed metal, shrieking against asphalt as it swung across the lanes like a monstrous pendulum. God, no, I swerved hard, my tires screaming, but it was too late. The impact was thunder steel crushing against steel. My car spun glass, shattering airbag, detonating into my chest. Pain bloomed everywhere at once. I caught one last image, the watch box flying open, the timepiece glinting as it slid across the dashboard. And then, absurdly, a billboard flashed through the chaos, "Protect what matters most." Darkness swallowed me. Somewhere in the void, Uncle James's voice echoed, "Money unmasks people, Tiffany. Be careful who you trust." I wanted to answer him, but the world had already gone silent. The world returned in fragments first. The sterile scent of antiseptic, then the steady electronic beeping, then a dull ache that seemed to vibrate through every bone in my body. My eyelids felt like they were made of stone, but eventually they fluttered open, revealing a blurred ceiling washed in fluorescent light. "Easy there," a gentle voice said. I turned my head with effort and saw a woman in blue scrubs adjusting the IV lines by my bedside. Her name tag read, Sarah Winters, RN. She had kind eyes, the kind that held a person together when the rest of them was falling apart. "What happened?" My voice rasped, barely audible. "You were in a serious accident on Highway 65, she explained softly. "You've been unconscious for almost 2 days, but you're safe now." 2 days. The words slammed into me. I tried to sit up, panic surging, but a sharp bolt of pain shot through my ribs and forced me back down. "Don't move," Sarah cautioned quickly, laying a steady hand on my shoulder. "You've got 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and your leg was fractured pretty badly. The surgeons repaired it with pins. You'll need a long recovery, but you're alive. That's what matters." Alive. I should have felt grateful. Instead, my first thought was of Eric, my husband. Eric. He knows I'm here. Sarah hesitated a flicker so brief, I might have missed it if I wasn't watching her face so closely. "We called the emergency contact in your phone. Left messages, but he hasn't come yet." I stared at her, the words sinking slowly, painfully. Hasn't come yet. Surely there was a mistake. Eric loved me, even if he'd been distant. The accident must have shocked him into silence. Maybe he didn't know how to process it. "He'll come," I whispered more to myself than to her. Sarah gave a small smile, but her eyes carried doubt. "I'm sure he will." Hours bled into days, measured only by the changing nurse's shift and the endless hum of machines. Every time the door opened, I half expected Eric to walk in with flowers, his face crumpled with relief. But the doorway stayed empty. I called his phone when my hands were strong enough to hold it, straight to voicemail. I texted him short messages at first. "I'm awake. Please come." Then longer ones, "I was in a crash. I need you. I'm scared." They showed as delivered, but never answered. By the 4th day, the silence was unbearable. My chest tightened, not from broken ribs, but from something heavier, sharper. Sarah found me crying quietly one afternoon and pulled a chair beside the bed. Still no word, she asked gently. I shook my head. My throat hurt from holding back sobs. Not even a single message to ask if I'm okay. We've been married 7 years, and he can't pick up the phone. Her eyes softened with compassion, but her tone remained practical. "Sometimes people shut down when they don't know how to cope. It doesn't mean he doesn't care." I wanted to believe her, but even as she spoke, her voice carried the careful balance of someone offering comfort without conviction. On the 7th day, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt. I nearly dropped it, fumbling to unlock the screen. Finally, Eric. But the message was short. "Heard about accident. Really busy with breakthrough project. We'll visit when things calm down." "No, are you okay? No, I love you." Just businesslike detachment, as if I were a colleague who had inconvenienced him. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I showed Sarah my hands trembling. She frowned. "That doesn't sound right. If he cared, he'd be here no matter what project he's working on." Maybe he's scared of hospitals," I offered weakly. Sarah didn't respond. She just tucked the blanket around me more firmly and said, "Do you have friends who can check on him?" I thought of Melanie, my closest friend, but when I called, her voice was strangely strained, filled with excuses. "I'll come by soon," she said quickly, then changed the subject before I could ask about Eric. I hung up feeling more unsettled than before. That night, the hospital was quiet, except for the occasional rattle of carts in the hallway. I couldn't sleep. Pain clawed at me, but worse was the gnawing suspicion taking root in my chest. I picked up Sarah's tablet, which she had kindly left within reach, and opened social media. My stomach turned icy. There he was, Eric tagged in a post at Artemis Gallery, a high-end art club we could never have afforded to attend. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with the most inspiring company." The photo showed him raising a champagne glass, his arm draped casually around a woman with dark hair. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. I dialed his number immediately, ignoring the pain searing through my ribs. This time he answered. "Eric." My voice broke. "I'm in the hospital. I've been here for a week. Where are you?" Music thudded in the background. Voices laughter. He sighed as though I'd interrupted something important. "Look, Tiffany, I'm in the middle of something." "More important than your wife being in critical condition," I demanded. There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed cold, unfamiliar. "I don't have time or money for a loser, Tiffany. Some of us are moving forward with our lives." The line went dead. For a moment, I thought I must have hallucinated. The words didn't fit the man I'd married, the man I'd sacrificed sleep and dreams for, the man I had supported while he chased art shows and critics' approval. But the silence that followed was real. The phone in my hand was real. The tears running hot down my face were real. I dropped the device onto the bed, curled against the sterile sheets, and let the sobs tear out of me until my broken ribs screamed with every breath. When Sarah came in an hour later and found me shaking, she didn't ask questions. She simply injected something into my IV, a sedative that dulled the edges of pain. As the haze pulled me under, I clung to one last thought. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The days after Eric's cold dismissal bled into each other like spilled ink, formless, suffocating. Hospital mornings were the same trays of bland oatmeal, the metallic sting of IV medication, Sarah's quiet attempts to coax me into talking. Nights were worse. The machines hummed in the dark, and I stared at the ceiling, replaying Eric's voice on the phone, that word he had spit out like venom loser. I told myself I must have misheard, or that shock had warped his words, but deep down, a seed of dread had taken root. On the 10th day, Sarah pulled up a chair beside me during her break. "Tiffany, you can't keep waiting for him to appear. I have seen patients recover faster when they focus on themselves, not on who isn't showing up." "I don't understand," I whispered. My voice sounded foreign, fragile. He was my everything. 7 years, Sarah. You don't throw that away because of one accident. Sarah studied me, her gaze steady but kind. Sometimes tragedy doesn't change people. It just reveals who they always were. Her words sank into me like stones, but before I could answer, the door creaked open. A familiar face peeked in Melanie. Her blonde hair was hastily tied back, and she clutched a bouquet of carnations, as though they were a shield. "You look terrible," she blurted, then winced. "Sorry, that came out wrong." I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. "I've heard worse." She sat down heavily, her eyes darting everywhere but my face. The carnation slipped onto her lap, forgotten. "Why have you been avoiding me?" I asked. Painkillers had dulled my usual restraint. The question came sharp, unvarnished. Melanie twisted her wedding ring nervously. I didn't know what to say. Everything's so messed up. "Tell me," I pressed, my voice trembling. "Tell me what's going on with Eric." She flinched, her eyes glistening. "Tiffany, he's with someone else." For a moment I thought I had misheard. "With someone? What do you mean?" Melanie's voice dropped to a whisper. "A woman named Vanessa. He's been telling people you didn't survive the crash." The room tilted violently. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear her next words. "He even held a small memorial at your apartment. I couldn't go. I felt sick. But I saw the posts. He's been introducing her as his partner." I stared at her, unable to breathe. "He told people I was dead while I'm lying here." Tears pooled in Melanie's eyes. "I only found out you were alive when Sarah called me yesterday. He blocked your accounts, changed the locks. Tiffany, it's like he erased you." I reached out blindly, grabbing the side rail of the bed to keep myself steady. My ribs throbbed with the movement, but the pain was nothing compared to the icy realization spreading through me. "Show me," I demanded, my voice low and shaking. "Show me this woman." Melanie hesitated, then pulled out her phone. With trembling hands, she opened Instagram. There he was, my husband, smiling. His arm draped around a slender young woman with glossy dark hair. They stood in front of an art gallery, champagne glasses raised in a toast. Her head rested against his shoulder as though she belonged there. I stared at the image, bile rising in my throat. There was something eerily familiar about her face, the curve of her cheekbones, the slope of her nose. But I couldn't place it. "Her name's Vanessa Laurent," Melanie explained, her voice breaking. "She works at the Hayward Gallery. They met a few months ago, apparently." A few months ago. My mind reeled back to the same period when I was spending my weekends at Uncle James's hospital bed, holding his hand, listening to his whispered stories. While I was watching a man I loved, like a second father, fade away, Eric had been cultivating someone new. Melanie swallowed hard. Tiffany, there's more. I tore my gaze from the phone, dread coiling in my stomach. What more could there be? They got married. Last weekend. Quick ceremony at the courthouse. People thought it was strange, but he said he was moving forward, that you would have wanted him to be happy. My breath caught painfully, as if the air itself had turned against me. Married. My husband had buried me with lies and replaced me within days. The monitor beside me beeped rapidly, betraying my spiraling panic. Sarah rushed in, her eyes flashing as she took in the scene. That's enough, she said, firmly guiding Melanie toward the door. I'm sorry, Tiffany, Melanie called back, tears running down her face. I should have told you sooner. The door closed, leaving silence thick as fog. Sarah sat at my bedside, her hand firm on mine. Breathe, she instructed, slowly in and out. You can't let this break you. But it already had. My heart felt like glass, shattered into pieces too small to ever fit back together. I turned my head toward the ceiling, blinking back tears. He didn't just leave me, Sarah. He buried me alive. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then you fight. You fight for your truth, for your life. Don't let him write the ending of your story. Her words stirred something inside me, a flicker faint but stubborn, refusing to be snuffed out. That night, when the sedatives finally pulled me into sleep, I dreamed of Uncle James again. He was standing in his library books, glowing faintly behind him. Money unmasks people, he said, his voice echoing like thunder. And betrayal teaches you who you are willing to become. I woke with tears on my cheeks, clutching the blanket. For the first time since the crash, I wasn't just broken, I was angry. And anger, I realized, could be the first step toward survival. The morning after Melanie's visit, I sat propped up in my hospital bed, my body aching, but my mind sharper than it had been in weeks. The betrayal had seared me awake, as if the pain itself had burned away the fog of medication. Eric had declared me dead, married another woman. And yet he hadn't stopped there. Something darker lingered in the spaces between Melanie's halting words. Sarah brought my breakfast tray, but I pushed it aside, untouched. I need my lawyer, I told her, my voice hoarse but steady. Benjamin Harrison. He handled my uncle's will. She didn't question me. Within hours, Benjamin walked into my hospital room, his leather briefcase in hand, his expression grim. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a messenger carrying a storm. Tiffany, he said, pulling up a chair, I've been trying to reach you. There have been developments. My stomach tightened. Let me guess. Eric. Benjamin adjusted his glasses. He came to my office 3 days ago, with a young woman he introduced as your sister. They presented documents, death certificates, marriage certificates, claiming you had passed away in an accident. I gripped the blanket so hard my knuckles whitened. My sister? I don't have a sister. That's exactly what I told him, Benjamin said. But the woman, Vanessa, I believe, insisted she was entitled to part of the estate as your sibling. They were very prepared. Too prepared. The documents were falsified but sophisticated. If I hadn't known you personally, I might have been persuaded. Vanessa. The name hit me like ice water. The woman Melanie had shown me. The woman Eric had married. He's trying to steal my inheritance, I whispered. Benjamin's mouth tightened. Yes, and he's moving quickly. He attempted to file paperwork identifying himself as your next of kin, requesting control of your accounts while the estate transitions. If you hadn't signed the will yourself, his claim might have caused delays. I pressed a hand against my chest, feeling my heart pound against the bruised ribs. How did he even know about the inheritance I never told him? I didn't get the chance. Benjamin paused, his silence heavy. That's what troubles me. He came armed with too many details. It suggests prior knowledge. Uncle James's warning echoed in my mind like thunder rolling across a valley. Money doesn't change people, it unmasks them. I closed my eyes briefly, a sick suspicion forming. Eric must have seen the documents, the letter, something. Maybe when I was careless. Maybe when he rifled through my things, claiming to look for inspiration. He had always said artists notice everything. Benjamin leaned forward. Tiffany, I need to ask, do you want me to pursue criminal charges now, or wait until we have more evidence? I opened my eyes, the fluorescent lights blurring slightly. More evidence. If Eric thinks I'm weak, let him keep believing it. I need to know what he's planning. You're playing a dangerous game, Benjamin warned, but I'll stand by you. We'll dig into Vanessa Laurent. If she isn't who she claims to be, we'll prove it. Find everything you can, I said, my voice hardening. And Benjamin, Don't underestimate her. There's something about her face, something I can't shake. That evening, Sarah came in to change my IV and found me staring at the ceiling, my mind miles away. You look like you're fighting ghosts, she said gently. Not ghosts, I murmured. Living people. People who want me gone. Sarah paused, then spoke carefully. Tiffany, I need you to hear this. If your husband is plotting against you, you can't fight him alone. You need allies, people who believe you. Her words touched something raw in me. For days I had felt like a discarded shadow erased by the man I trusted most. But now I had proof of his deceit and the beginnings of a team, Sarah Benjamin. Maybe even Melanie if she could find her courage. Still at night, when the ward grew quiet, doubts crept in. What if Eric succeeded? What if the world believed his lies more than my truths? I dreamed of the crash again. The truck spinning the watch, sliding across the dashboard. But this time in the dream, I saw Eric's face in the truck's windshield. Cold, detached, watching me crumble. I jolted awake, gasping, clutching my ribs. The next morning, Benjamin returned with updates. Vanessa Laurent, 26 years old, works as an assistant at Hayward Gallery. Adopted as a child, closed adoption. No criminal record. On paper, she's ordinary. Adopted. The word snagged in my mind, catching on an old wound I had long buried. But I shoved it aside, and her connection to me, unclear. But she bears a resemblance to you, Tiffany, enough that she could pass as family if someone wasn't looking closely. The room spun slightly. Resemblance. Adopted. My mind whispered half-formed questions I wasn't ready to face. Benjamin studied me. We can expose them now, but if you're willing, we can set a trap. Let Eric believe he's close to winning. See how far he goes. A chill crawled up my spine. And when he shows his hand, then we'll be ready. I thought of Eric's voice on the phone, dismissing me like I was already dead. I thought of Uncle James's letter warning me that money unmasks. And I thought of the young woman's face on Melanie's phone, so familiar it made my skin crawl. I nodded slowly. Do it. Let him come to me. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes I know. That night, Sarah lingered after her shift. She adjusted my blanket, then hesitated. I don't usually say this, but you remind me of my sister. Stubborn as hell, never let anyone walk over her. I gave a small laugh, the sound brittle. Stubborn's the only thing keeping me alive right now. She met my eyes. Then hold on to it, because I've got a feeling the storm hasn't even started. As she left, the beeping of the machines seemed louder than before, marking time until the inevitable confrontation. I stared at the shadows creeping across the hospital wall and whispered to myself, Come, Eric, show me who you really are. The knock at my hospital door came at precisely 2:00 p.m. I knew it was them before Sarah even looked up from the monitor. My chest tightened, heart thrashing against fractured ribs. Ready, Benjamin asked from his quiet post near the window, his briefcase on his lap, his face calm but alert. I swallowed hard, as ready as I'll ever be. Sarah gave my hand a squeeze before stepping back, positioning herself near the bathroom door. The tiny camera she'd helped set up earlier blinked green, recording every detail. Come in, I called, forcing my voice steady. The door opened, and Eric stepped inside. My breath caught not because I missed him, but because of how changed he looked. The man who had once struggled to buy paint was dressed in a sleek blazer, his hair styled with a precision I had never seen. A gleaming watch, far more expensive than the one I had bought him, hugged his wrist. Tiffany, he said. His tone practiced his eyes scanning the room with irritation he tried to hide behind feigned relief. You're awake. We've been so worried. We. He gestured toward the doorway, and a slender figure appeared. Vanessa. She hesitated just a second before stepping into full view. She was striking, dark hair falling in waves, a fitted dress that whispered money. My stomach lurched at the sight of her, not because she was beautiful, but because of the uncanny familiarity in her features. Eric strode closer to the bed, his performance smooth, like he was playing a role in one of his paintings. The doctor said your memory might be patchy, he explained carefully. So much has happened while you've been recovering. I let silence stretch, watching him sweat beneath his calm facade. Finally I spoke, like you telling people I was dead. His step faltered, the mask slipping for just a heartbeat. Then he recovered, offering a sympathetic smile. A misunderstanding. They told me you might not make it, and I panicked. Some people took my grief the wrong way. I tilted my head, my eyes never leaving his. And the courthouse wedding, was that grief too? A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. He smoothed it over quickly, but Vanessa shifted uncomfortably beside him. Darling, Eric said, pulling a set of papers from his jacket, we don't need to dwell on gossip. What matters is your health. You're in no condition to manage $11 million, not with your injuries. I've drawn up documents authorizing me to handle things until you're strong again. He held them out like a peace offering, but his eyes, sharp and patient, betrayed him. I let out a small laugh, bitter and cold. You mean my inheritance? The 11 million you tried to claim with forged death certificates. His jaw tightened. You remember that? I remember enough, I said. And I remember the man I married would have been at my bedside the moment he heard. Not celebrating new beginnings at Artemis Gallery. For the first time, anger cracked through his performance. His voice sharpened. You don't understand what's at stake. That money is mine, I cut in. And it's more revealing than you know. Benjamin stood then, setting his briefcase on the table. Mr. Wallace, I'm Benjamin Harrison, Tiffany's attorney. I've seen the documents you and this young woman presented at my office. Fraud on that scale carries serious consequences. Eric spun around, his face flushing. Who the hell invited you? I did, I said quietly. For a moment, silence. Then Vanessa stepped closer, her eyes flicking between me and Eric. I could see her pulse fluttering at her throat. You remember Vanessa, Eric said smoothly, trying to regain control. Your cousin's daughter. She's practically family. I stared at her, really stared, and that's when I saw it, her eyes. Not just familiar, but hauntingly so. My breath caught the air, leaving me in a rush. Vanessa's lips parted. She looked at me as if seeing something she hadn't expected, her face draining of color. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice trembling. She's my mother. The room went still. Even the heart monitor seemed to pause, the silence deafening. What my voice cracked, though I barely recognized it. Eric whipped toward her, fury flashing in his eyes. He gripped her arm hard. Shut up, he hissed under his breath. Stick to the plan. But Vanessa's gaze was locked on mine, wide with dawning recognition. Her hand dove into her purse, pulling out a creased photograph. She held it out with trembling fingers. I've been looking for you my entire life, she said, her voice breaking. I stared at the photograph, the world spinning around me. It showed a teenage girl holding a newborn baby, her face tear-streaked but unmistakably mine. The blanket slipped from my lap as my hands shook violently. Where did you get this? I whispered. It was with me when I was adopted, Vanessa said. Tears welled in her eyes. It's the only thing I had of my birth mother, of you. The ground beneath me seemed to vanish. Memories I had buried 17 years ago surged back, my parents' horrified faces, the whispers at school, the distant aunt I'd been sent to live with, and the tiny infant I'd held once before they took her from me. I had spent years convincing myself that chapter was closed forever, that the baby girl had gone to another life, another family, a better chance than I could give her. And now she was standing in front of me. My daughter, Vanessa's voice cracked through the chaos. You're the girl in the photo. You're my mother. Eric's grip on her arm tightened. Don't listen to her. He snapped, his mask of sophistication crumbling. She's confused. She's manipulating you. Be quiet, Eric, I said, my voice trembling but fierce. For once in your life, shut up. The monitor beside me beeped faster, betraying the storm inside me. But I didn't care. I reached for the photo with shaking hands, my heart splitting open as I stared at the younger version of myself, so terrified, so broken, but holding the one thing I thought I'd lost forever. Vanessa wiped her cheeks, whispering through tears. I never stopped searching for you. I thought I'd never find you, and now, here you are. I wanted to reach out to embrace her, to undo 17 years of absence. But the man between us, the man who had orchestrated this nightmare, was still standing there, seething, cornered. And I realized with bone-deep clarity, Eric hadn't just stolen my trust. He had tried to weaponize my daughter against me. The photo trembled in my hands, though it wasn't the paper that shook it, was me. The young girl staring back from the faded image was a ghost I had tried to bury. 18 years old, my face blotchy from crying, my arms cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in hospital linen. I remembered that moment as if it had been branded onto me, the first and last time I held her. My voice cracked. I was 18, senior year of high school. My parents panicked when they found out I was pregnant. The scandal, the shame, it was too much for them. They sent me to live with a distant aunt in another town. When you were born, my throat closed, the words sticking like glass. They let me hold you once, just once. Then they arranged a closed adoption. I thought my chest heaved. I thought I would never see you again. Vanessa lowered herself onto the edge of my bed, her eyes shimmering. I grew up with wonderful parents, loving, kind. They never hid that I was adopted. They told me I was wanted, even if by someone else. But all I had of you was this photograph. I carried it with me everywhere. When I turned 18, I started searching. Her gaze darted to Eric, bitterness flashing. And then, he found me first. Eric's grip tightened on her arm, his voice sharp. Vanessa, stop this nonsense. You're confusing things. This isn't the time. She wrenched free, her voice rising. You told me she wanted to meet me. You told me she was afraid of rejection, that I was the missing piece of her life. You made me believe, her breath hitched. You made me believe in us. The raw hurt in her words sliced me open. Eric, always the charmer, had turned my daughter's longing into bait. I forced myself upright, ignoring the pain screaming from my ribs. You manipulated her, Eric. You used her to get closer to the inheritance. His composure fractured, his voice laced with venom. Don't paint yourself as the Saint Tiffany. You abandoned her. You handed her off like baggage and walked away. I gave her purpose. I gave her connection. The accusation burned, but before I could speak, Benjamin's calm voice cut through the tension. Mr. Wallace, let's not forget you presented falsified death certificates. That's fraud. You claimed entitlement to an estate you had no legal right to. That's theft. And if you knowingly manipulated this young woman into participating, that's conspiracy. Eric spun toward him, eyes wild. You lawyers twist everything. I was trying to protect my family's future. By declaring me dead, I asked, my voice low but steady. His eyes flickered, darting between me, Vanessa, and the lawyer. For the first time, he looked cornered. Vanessa turned back to me, her expression fragile, desperate. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He said you'd been searching for me too, but you didn't know how to reach me. When he proposed, her voice faltered. He told me it would prove to you that I was settled safe, that you'd be happy for me. My breath caught. He proposed to her. The man I had given my youth to, the man I had once believed in, had not only erased me, he had tried to claim my daughter through marriage. The room swayed. Sarah stepped forward, steadying my shoulder. Vanessa. I whispered, my eyes locked on hers. You have nothing to apologize for. You were looking for your mother, not a scheme. You couldn't have known. Tears slipped down her cheeks. All my life I dreamed of this moment. Meeting you. But not like this. Not with him. Eric sneered. Oh, please, don't be naive. This was mutually beneficial. She wanted a family, I gave her one. I wanted security, she provided it. That's how the world works. The coldness of his words hit Vanessa like a slap. She recoiled, staring at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. You used me, she whispered. Everything you said about love, about building a future, it was all a lie. Eric's voice rose, desperate now. I gave you a chance. You would have never found her otherwise. I made this reunion possible. I shook my head, fury lacing my words. You didn't reunite us, Eric. You corrupted it. You turned something sacred into leverage. Benjamin opened his briefcase, pulling out his tablet. We have video evidence of your attempted fraud, Mr. Wallace. The falsified certificates, your signature, your words. Add to that your marriage to Vanessa while still legally married to Tiffany Bigamy. This will not end well for you. Eric lunged forward, reaching for the tablet, but Sarah was quicker, stepping between him and Benjamin. Her voice was firm, steady. Hospital security is outside. Try it and you'll be in cuffs before you hit the door. Eric froze, his chest heaving. For the first time I saw him without the mask. Not the struggling artist, not the charming husband, but a desperate man cornered by his own lies. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this, she said, her voice shaking. I can't be part of this anymore. She looked at me, eyes brimming with tears. I've spent 17 years wondering why my birth mother didn't want me. Now I know the truth. You were a scared teenager, and they gave me to another family. I don't blame you. But him. She pointed at Eric, her hand trembling. He made me believe I'd finally found someone who cared. He twisted everything. Her words pierced the room like arrows. Eric flinched, then straightened his tone, turning venomous. You think she cares? She gave you up. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who gave you answers. Enough, I said sharply. My voice cracked like a whip, surprising even myself. You don't get to rewrite history, Eric. Not mine, not hers. Vanessa's hand went to her purse again, pulling out the photograph. She pressed it into my palm, her fingers lingering on mine. I've carried this for 17 years, and now I know why it felt incomplete, because it was missing you. The dam I'd built inside me collapsed. Tears poured down my face, hot and unrestrained. For years, I had carried the guilt of abandonment like a chain around my neck. But in her eyes, I saw something I never expected: forgiveness. Eric scoffed, but his voice cracked under the weight of the moment. This is pathetic. You'll both thank me when the money runs out and reality sets in. Benjamin snapped his briefcase shut. Actually, reality is waiting just outside this door. Security fraud investigators, your performance is over, Mr. Wallace. The door opened, two security officers stepping in. Eric's bravado faltered as their hands closed on his arms. He tried one last time, his voice turning silky desperate. Tiffany, think about everything we've shared. You need me. You always needed me. I met his gaze, my voice steel. No, Eric. I needed a partner, not a parasite. The officers dragged him out, his protests echoing down the hall. When silence returned, I turned back to Vanessa. She was trembling, her tears mirroring mine. I never stopped thinking about you, I whispered. Not one day. She reached out her hand, tentative but warm, as it slipped into mine. Then maybe, this is our beginning. The heart monitor steadied my pulse, calming for the first time in weeks. Eric was gone, but my daughter was here. And for the first time, I believed there might be something left to fight for. The day after Eric was dragged from my hospital room, the silence felt strangely heavy, like the air itself was waiting for me to collapse. But instead of breaking, something in me solidified. For weeks I had been drifting, injured, abandoned, powerless. Now, for the first time, I felt steady. The lies were exposed. My enemy had a face. Benjamin arrived early with a stack of papers and a calm assurance that steadied me further. Eric is in holding, he explained, adjusting his glasses. They're processing charges, fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, bigamy. And depending on how certain evidence plays out, possibly conspiracy. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion flooding me. Conspiracy. Benjamin hesitated. Tiffany, it appears he was unusually prepared for your accident. Too prepared. Investigators believe he may have anticipated it or even planned for it. The words struck like lightning. My mind raced back to the truck swerving across the highway, the sudden violence of it. Could Eric have? No, that was too monstrous, too impossible. And yet hadn't Uncle James warned me, money doesn't change people, it unmasks them. Sarah wheeled in my lunch tray, her eyes darting between us. You don't have to figure everything out today, she said gently. Focus on surviving, the rest will come. But survival no longer felt like enough. I wanted answers. Vanessa visited daily after Eric's arrest. At first, our conversations were awkward, stilted exchanges between two strangers bound by blood but not by history. She'd perch in the visitor's chair, hands folded, eyes darting nervously as though afraid I would send her away. One afternoon, I broke the silence. Tell me about your parents, your adoptive ones. Her face softened. They're wonderful. My dad teaches high school science, and my mom's a librarian. They made sure I always knew I was loved. They never pretended I wasn't adopted. They said my birth mother was young and wanted me to have opportunities she couldn't give. My throat tightened. That's exactly what I hoped for you. Tears welled in her eyes. They'd like to meet you someday, but only if you want that. I nodded slowly. I'd like that very much. She smiled, tentative, but real. In that moment, I felt the first fragile thread of connection forming, stitching across the 17 years of absence. Dr. Jessica Parker. The hospital psychologist became a steady presence in my days. She didn't sugarcoat. She listened, asked piercing questions, and pushed me to face truths I wanted to bury. You've endured 3 traumas at once, she said in one session. A near-fatal accident, your husband's betrayal, and the sudden reappearance of a daughter you thought you'd lost. It's no wonder you feel torn apart. I stared at my hands, twisting the hospital blanket between my fingers. I don't know how to forgive myself. I left her. I let them take her. Jessica's voice was firm. You were a teenager. Pressured, scared, isolated. You did the best you could with what you had. Guilt can't change the past, but it can poison the present. What Vanessa needs now isn't your regret, it's your presence. Her words struck deep. For the first time, I considered that maybe I could be more than a woman defined by loss. Maybe I could be a mother even now. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Detective Laura Jennings visited my room. She placed a sealed evidence bag on my tray, her expression serious. Inside was a small prescription bottle, my name typed neatly on the label. These were found in your apartment during a search, she explained. Powerful sedatives. Prescribed 3 days before your accident. I frowned in confusion, twisting my gut. I've never seen those. I've never even needed sleeping pills. Detective Jennings nodded grimly. That's what concerns us. Several neighbors reported that you seemed unusually tired and disoriented in the weeks before the crash. Some even said you slurred your words during conversations. My blood ran cold. Memories surfaced, foggy mornings, where I struggled to focus evenings when I chalked up my exhaustion to stress and long work hours. But what if it hadn't been stress? What if it had been Eric, slipping pills into my tea or food? Sarah gasped softly. He was softening you up, making you weaker. Jennings's gaze was steady. We can't prove intent yet, but the pattern is troubling. Combined with the falsified documents and his attempt to seize your inheritance, it paints a very dark picture. I clutched the blanket, my body trembling. The crash hadn't been his first betrayal, it might have been his final move. And if I hadn't survived, he would have won. That night, Vanessa lingered after visiting ours. She perched on the edge of my bed, silent for a long while. Finally, she whispered, "I feel so stupid for believing him." I reached for her hand, ignoring the pain radiating through my body. "Don't. He's always been convincing. He fooled me for 7 years. You wanted to believe in love. That's not stupidity. It's hope." Her eyes filled with tears. I spent years wondering why my birth mother didn't want me. And then I met him, and I thought maybe this is family. Maybe this is what I was missing. Tears blurred my vision. You weren't missing anything. You had a family. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life now, not instead of them alongside them. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her lips trembling. Then she squeezed my hand. I'd like that too. Benjamin returned the next morning with a new worry. Eric's lawyers are already circling. He's claiming emotional instability, saying the stress of your accident clouded his judgment. They'll try to paint him as misguided, not malicious. Misguided, I snapped. He falsified my death, married my daughter, and tried to steal $11 million. How is that misguided? Benjamin gave a thin smile. Don't worry, the evidence is strong. Between the forged documents, the prescription bottles, and the recording we captured during the confrontation, his case is crumbling. He won't walk away from this. I exhaled slowly, tension leaving my shoulders. For the first time, I believed Eric would pay. That evening, Sarah wheeled me to the hospital's small garden. The air was crisp, filled with the faint scent of lavender. Vanessa walked beside us, her arm lightly brushing mine, and for a fleeting moment, I felt almost whole. I tilted my face toward the setting sun, letting its warmth bathe me. Eric had tried to erase me, to bury me in silence and lies. But here I was, alive, awake, holding the hand of the daughter he had tried to twist into his accomplice. His betrayal had broken me, but her presence was beginning to stitch me back together. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of resolve flared. Eric had taken enough from me. The rest of my story would belong to me and to Vanessa. The day of my discharge arrived like a strange dream. Nurses bustled in and out, paperwork, shuffled machines, unhooked. For weeks, the beeping monitors had been my constant companions. Now their silence left me feeling oddly exposed. My body ached with every movement, my right leg braced in metal, but my mind pulsed with restless energy. I wasn't going back to the apartment Eric had stripped of me. I needed a new home, a new life. "Where will you go?" Sarah asked gently as she wheeled me toward the exit. I hesitated. The thought of returning to the apartment made bile rise in my throat. Hotels were temporary, soulless. Vanessa had offered her tiny flat, but the idea of squeezing myself into her already fragile life felt wrong. Benjamin, who had come to finalize paperwork, cleared his throat. "What about your uncle's estate? It's empty. It belongs to you now, and frankly, it could use someone to breathe life back into it." Uncle James's estate. The sprawling Victorian house of my childhood memories, with its creaking staircases and the smell of old wood and leather. The place where he'd first told me curiosity was my compass. The thought bloomed slowly, then settled with a certainty I hadn't expected. "Yes," I said softly. "The estate." The drive there was quiet. Vanessa sat in the driver's seat, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I watched the city recede, the landscape shifting into open fields and rolling hills dusted with late winter frost. It felt like traveling backward in time, back to the days when Uncle James' estate had been a place of wonder, before family feuds turned it into forbidden territory. When we pulled into the circular driveway, I gasped. The house loomed against the pale sky, grander than I remembered. Its wraparound porch sagged slightly, ivy clinging stubbornly to the brick. The windows reflected the setting sun like watchful eyes. "It's beautiful," Vanessa whispered. "Like something out of a storybook," I murmured, though my chest tightened with unease. Storybooks always came with curses hidden beneath the magic. Inside, the air smelled of dust and disuse, sheets draped over furniture like ghostly figures. Benjamin had arranged for basic modifications, ramps along the porch steps, grab bars, in the downstairs bathroom, a makeshift bedroom on the ground floor. Still, the house felt foreign, like a stranger waiting to be convinced of my right to stay. As Vanessa carried my bags in, she paused at the threshold of the study. This was his library, wasn't it? I nodded, my throat thick. The shelves stretched to the ceiling, rows of books untouched for years. I could almost see Uncle James sitting in his worn leather chair, glasses perched on his nose, telling me stories of faraway places. He wanted you here, Vanessa said softly. You can feel it. Her words settled over me like a benediction. Those first weeks in the estate were clumsy, like two actors learning unfamiliar roles. Vanessa and I orbited each other carefully, strangers and family, all at once. She discovered that I needed silence before my second cup of coffee. I learned she sang off-key in the shower every morning. We cooked awkward meals together, burning pasta, laughing at our mistakes. Slowly the house began to echo, not with silence, but with life. At night, though, the silence returned. I would lie awake in the temporary downstairs bedroom, listening to the creaks of the old house, the weight of history pressing down on me. Memories of Eric slithered back uninvited, the way he had called me a loser, the way his arm had wrapped around Vanessa in that gallery photo. Rage mingled with sorrow until my chest ached. One night, unable to sleep, I wheeled myself into the library. The moonlight poured through tall windows, painting the shelves in silver. I ran my fingers along the spines of books Uncle James had once shown me. In that quiet, his voice seemed to linger. Wealth unmasks. Be careful who you trust. I whispered back, I trusted the wrong person. But maybe I've been given a second chance. Vanessa's guilt hung heavy between us at times. One evening, as we cleared dishes, she blurted out, I quit the gallery. I couldn't stand it anymore. Every corner reminded me of him, his lies, his manipulation. I don't know what I'll do now. I set the dishcloth down, studying her. What did you want to do before him? She hesitated, then said, psychology. I wanted to help adoptees and birth parents navigate reunions, maybe because of my own story. A small smile tugged at my lips. That sounds perfect. Her eyes lit faintly. Do you think I could still do it? Go back to school? Of course, I said firmly. You can do anything, and you won't have to do it alone this time. Her eyes glistened, but she nodded, determination flickering across her face. Spring crept in slowly, thawing the estate grounds. Vanessa and I began taking short walks around the garden paths, me with my crutches, her hovering protectively at my side. The neglected flower beds sprouted weeds, but beneath them, daffodils pushed their way up stubbornly. One afternoon, we sat on the porch steps, watching the horizon glow with sunset. Vanessa hugged her knees to her chest. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Regret what? Giving me up. The question sliced through me. I swallowed hard. Every day. But at 18, I thought I was saving you from a harder life. I thought I was giving you a chance at happiness. She was silent for a long moment, then whispered, I was happy. They gave me everything. But part of me always wondered, why didn't you want me? Tears blurred my vision. I wanted you more than anything. I just didn't believe I could be enough. Her hand brushed mine, tentative but warm. You are enough. You always were. The estate became our strange sanctuary. Days were filled with physical therapy sessions, grueling but rewarding. I graduated from crutches to a cane, each milestone celebrated with cupcakes Vanessa bought from the local bakery. Evenings were for movie nights, laughter echoing through the halls that had once felt haunted. Yet the shadow of Eric still lingered. His trial loomed, his name whispered in legal updates Benjamin delivered. Sometimes when I closed my eyes, I still heard his voice silky and cold. You'll thank me when the money runs out. But when I opened my eyes, there was Vanessa alive, real my daughter. And I realized he hadn't won. He never could. The inheritance was never the true gift. She was. The invitation to meet Vanessa's adoptive parents came one quiet evening in late spring. We were sitting on the porch, fireflies winking in the dusk, when she said, They'd like to meet you, only if you're ready. My heart jolted. Ready. Could anyone ever be ready to face the people who had given your daughter the life you couldn't? The following weekend, the Lawrence arrived. Mark, a tall man with kind eyes, and Diana with a librarian's quiet grace. They didn't look at me with suspicion or resentment, but with warmth that nearly undid me. We've always known this day might come, Diana said as we sat in the estate's sunlit parlor. We've always told Vanessa you were young, scared, and that you loved her enough to let her go. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I did. I loved her so much it broke me. Mark reached across the table, his hand steady. She was never broken. She was loved every day. And now she gets to be loved by you too. It was not the confrontation I had feared. It was grace. forgiveness I hadn't known I needed. By the time they left, plans were already forming for shared holidays, birthdays, moments stitched together from the scraps of years we had lost. Meanwhile, Eric's world unraveled in the courtroom. I attended every hearing, cane in hand, my daughter beside me. He looked small in his orange jumpsuit, his once confident posture hunched under the weight of exposure. The prosecutors laid it bare: falsified death certificates, forged signatures, fraudulent marriage. The sedatives found in my apartment sealed his fate. His lawyer tried to argue emotional collapse, but the evidence was too damning. When the judge pronounced the sentence 8 years without parole, Eric's eyes flicked to mine, searching for pity. I gave him none. Vanessa leaned close, whispering, "He doesn't get to take up space in your life anymore." She was right. Watching him led away in chains, I didn't feel triumph, only release. A door closing forever. Life at the estate grew into rhythm. Vanessa enrolled in university that fall, diving into psychology courses with a passion that reminded me of Uncle James's relentless curiosity. I took tentative steps into my own reinvention, dusting off the half-written essays I'd once scribbled in notebooks. At first, writing was therapy bleeding pain onto the page, but slowly it became something more, a story I wanted to share. At night, I sat in the library surrounded by James's books, typing by lamplight. My novel took shape, not a memoir, but a reimagining of love, betrayal, survival. Turning tragedy into art gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. Sometimes Vanessa would wander in textbooks under her arm. She'd curl on the couch reading while I wrote, the two of us side by side in companionable silence. It felt ordinary and extraordinary. 1 year after the crash, I hosted a gathering at the estate. The people who had carried me through the storm filled the rooms. Sarah, who had stood guard over my heart in the hospital. Dr. Jessica, whose blunt kindness had anchored me. Benjamin, with his dry wit and relentless advocacy. Detective Jennings, who had pursued the truth without flinching. And of course, Vanessa and her adoptive parents. We sat around the long dining table, candles, flickering laughter, spilling through the hall that had once felt abandoned. I rose slowly, glass in hand. My legs still ached on rainy days, but I stood tall. To unexpected journeys, I said, my voice steady. To the people who help us find our way when the road breaks beneath us. Glasses clinked, voices echoed, and for the first time in a year, I felt whole. Later, when the guests had gone and the house had settled into quiet, Vanessa and I sat on the porch steps, watching the stars scatter across the sky. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Not the adoption, everything after. The accident, the betrayal, all the pain." I considered her words carefully. Regret implies I'd choose differently if given the chance. And no, I wouldn't. Because all of it, every broken bone, every lie, led me here, to you. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and for a moment the ache of 17 years melted into something gentler belonging. As the night deepened, I thought of Uncle James. His words echoed again. Money doesn't change people, it unmasks them. He had been right. The inheritance had unmasked Eric's greed, Melanie's cowardice, even my own buried wounds. But it had also revealed strength I hadn't known I carried, and the daughter I had believed lost forever. I whispered into the night, "Thank you, Uncle, for everything." The wind rustled the ivy along the porch as though he had answered. In the end, I realized true wealth had nothing to do with the millions resting in my bank account. It was this, my daughter's laughter in the kitchen, the shared meals, the letters from her adoptive parents thanking me for being part of her life, the new family forged not from blood alone, but from choice. I had lost a husband, but gained a daughter. Lost illusions, but gained clarity. Lost the life I thought I wanted, only to find one infinitely more real. The crash had broken my body, but it had healed my heart. Sometimes you have to survive a wreck to find your way home. And I had.